namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to continue with our analysis on Chittaja Rūpas, which we started last week. In the previous lecture, we talked about voluntary actions and also maintaining the posture. So the main topics were maintaining the posture and deliberate movement. So under deliberate movement, we talked about voluntary actions that we do with intention, like intentionally moving the body and speaking. Then we can find another two types of subcategories which most of the people would think happen out of at the absence of consciousness. Absence of consciousness means without paying attention. In the day-to-day life, we may consider this that the action was done while the mind was elsewhere or without any attention. But in terms of Theravada teachings, we find that every deliberate movement has some focus on it. It cannot be done without intentional effort. Today we are going to talk about two subcategories: instinctive reactions and habitual activities and actions driven by vasana. The first is instinctive reactions. Instinctive reactions. Instinctive reactions. Then habitual actions. I think connected to this is actions driven by vasana. Vasana are tendencies prevailing in our mind due to past defilements or past habits, things that we used to do frequently in samsara. If I start the paragraph reading the handout, instinctive reactions. Sometimes we act suddenly or instinctively, especially in response to something unpleasant or unexpected. If unpleasant or unexpected, as a response to an unpleasant or unexpected stimuli, we act suddenly. So we see that the body is naturally responding this. Many think that on such occasions there is no voluntary involvement of consciousness. How is this phenomenon explained in the context of Theravada? So instinctive reactions. For instance, while we are walking barefoot, if we happen to step upon a thorn or a piece of burning charcoal, we suddenly feel the pain and we take out the leg from the position. We may jump or we may shout. We may have a sudden reaction to this unexpected, unpleasant stimuli. Now, we may consider that this is a response made by the body, but according to Theravada teachings, there is consciousness is involved in that process. A sudden happening of an action or a sudden response to an unpleasant stimuli, that suddenness, rapidness, doesn't mean that the consciousness is absent on that occasion. It doesn't mean that the consciousness is not contributing to the action. Since due to the rapidness of the consciousness itself, it is also possible. Now, for instance, we may feel that it happens so quickly that therefore there was no time for a conscious conscious thought to process. We seems like as the stimuli struck or as the stimuli arose, as the incident happened, instantly, without any delay, suddenly we made a response. The body made a response. The body suddenly took away the hand and so forth, the leg and so forth. But due to the rapidness of the consciousness, the process of consciousness, it is possible for the consciousness to process a very thorough, the complete process, to make a complete process and complete this action in a sudden. So that is mainly due to the rapidness of the consciousness. So therefore, the rapidness of the action, quickness of the action in our instinctively we feel, intuitively we feel that it is not possible for the consciousness to respond in such a sudden, but due to the rapidness, the quickness of the consciousness, it intuitively we feel like it's not possible. But given the rapidness of the consciousness, the speed of the consciousness, how it arises and passes away, it is possible for this speed process of this reality to suddenly take the input and process it and quickly respond to that. And the consciousness is made in a way, the process is made in a way so it would react to such instant stimuli. A very important reason, very fundamental cause for this is our consciousness is somewhat programmed by defilements. It doesn't mean like programming a computer. It doesn't mean like it's similar to a program in a computer, but due to the prevailing ignorance and the attachment to the life, it is natural for us, to our consciousness, to be attentive to such stimuli. If something that, if it finds out that, if it feels, if it senses that something dangerous is going to happen to the life, suddenly it responds to this. The reason is it's already been programmed or it's already been affected by the craving, so it craves for this life very much. Now, in the absence of such craving, for instance, think about an arahant, there is very less instinctive responses to unpleasant stimuli. There are many such stories, and it is one of the tests that monks are supposed to do if you are not very sure about the attainment of a person who claims to have attainment, because monks can claim their attainments to other monks. It is not possible for us to claim the supernatural attainments, higher spiritual attainments. They include jhana, maggapala, not vipassana. Vipassana is not considered as a uttari manusa dhamma. Jhana and maggapala, these sublime attainments, we cannot express, even possessing them, we cannot express to a non-ordained person, anupasamparan, who has not got the full ordination. But it is possible for us to express to each other. So if monk is expressing his supernatural or super spiritual attainments, higher spiritual attainments, if you are not sure about it, it is said that we should not accept them as he says. We have to test him, his behavior, we have to question him, and even he passes all these tests, there is a test to check about his instinctive responses. Because most of the instinctive responses are made out of defilement. It's a defiled mind. Suddenly the defilement is what responds to this. And mostly this happens to unpleasant stimuli. So our mind is now the defilement, the latent defilements, latent craving to the life, craving for the life is present in us and is constantly active. Though it does not come into the level of obsession or pariyuttana as a cetasika, this is always affecting the mind, and we have been all constantly in such craving state unconsciously. We are not aware of that. How do we know this? Because if suddenly a sudden danger, if we sense a sudden danger, quickly it responds. It responds. For instance, if you think about a country where the terrorists are ruling, or there is martial law going on, always there is some danger of the people being executed for no reason or for unfair trials. So when we are living in a democratic country where the justice is prevailing, when we think about those people, when we consider about those people, we feel like they are in constant fear. That is not to say that always fear is persisting or arising in their mind, or every consciousness they have is dosamula or associated with fear. They do have enjoyment, they do have fun, they enjoy, they smile, they live together with their families, they enjoy with their children. But overall speaking, their life is under constant fear. For instance, even while they are having a party in a house, if someone at the night comes and knocks at the door in a strange way, or a loud knock, everything, all the dynamics change, because they know in conventional saying subconscious. There's no subconsciousness in Abhidhamma, but what I want to say is latently they have some kind, their minds are programmed in a way. If such a sound happens, quickly they think about, or they come into a assumption that some danger is going to happen. Someone is coming into the house, or a police or army is going to investigate, or something unpleasant could happen. So they are in this constant fear. Constant fear means that fear is not subdued, because they are in such an environment, and it's actual fact that such dangers could happen to the person. So likewise, now when we see from outside, we consider that those people are in constant fear, because anytime the dangers could fall upon them, and they are also not happy about it. They are also responding out of fear to such stimuli, such incidences. In the same way, if an arahant looks at us, observes us, they would feel, even though we are happy, overall we are in a good state in the human world, compared to the other beings in the woeful realms, we are enjoying our lives to a greater degree compared to them, but still we are in constant fear of losing our lives. We may not contemplate it all the time. Like the person in a country of martial law does not always think about the dangers that befall them, but their minds are programmed. They are always attentive. If suddenly any signs of danger appears, they recognize this, because their minds are programmed in such a way. That's the reason. If you explain this in Abhidhamma, that is, their dosa of fear, the latent fear, is active to a greater extent over the other defilements. So it's not been fully subdued. The trigger could be the actual reasons of the society or the political system. In the same way, our minds are programmed in a way to attach to this life. We have a strong attachment. As long as that attachment is not subdued, and the ignorance is not removed, which is the cause for the attachment, a sudden dangerous incident, an indicator of a danger to the life, we would suddenly respond to that. That's the outcome. So compared to an arahant, we are in constant fear. They would feel, because they would not even respond to such a sudden unpleasant stimuli. They may avoid the dangers, that's obvious. They may not walk into a train or a car, arahant. If a car comes towards them, they would surely go away from the path, because they know it's not worthy dying and to experience the pain. But their response is not like ours. We would respond out of fear and a defiled mind. We are afraid of losing our life. So our heartbeat increases. the breath rate increases. We start to shiver. Sometimes even out of fear, the urine passes away. These things are natural. This could happen to any being. The reason is our mind is automatically attached to this life. So these instinctive reactions are mostly triggered by the attachment to this life. The latent attachment to the life. But since, for example, another simile is now, if we have programmed our minds in order to observe certain changes in a cell while we are observing through a microscope, or someone is observing, as an astronaut, is observing the skies, the stars, they would even notice the slightest change in the cell or in the sky. They are very attentive to that because they have programmed their minds. They have made a determination. I'm using the word programming because in order to express the idea, it's like they already have determined or made a resolution. That's what I meant by programming. To observe, to notice the subtle changes that are happening in the field they are observing. So this prior resolution or determination or programming makes their mind quickly to notice anything that is abnormal and that is related to their subject. A person who is just observing the skies or just observing a cell may not see such difference and he will not be very attentive to such changes. Even such changes they may pass away without him noticing them. So therefore, when we have already made a determination or resolution and intentionally are cautious about something, then we suddenly notice it. Now think in a worldly sense, for example, if someone is attached to someone, whatever the other person does in a party room, the other party is always constantly aware. Sudden change of that person, they can notice. A sudden emotion of the other person, they will notice. If they adore the other person very much, if they are very, very much attached to the other person, even the slightest change will be, the other person would notice or recognize. And that they would get affected by that also. The thing is, they have made a resolution, or automatically their mind is more inclined towards the other person. So it's natural for us to notice such changes or to sense such changes of the thing that we are into. In the same way, we are automatically by birth into our lives. We like it. We are attached to it. This is the most precious thing in our lives. For example, another simile, if you take another simile, if someone is carrying a gem with him, a very precious gem that could alleviate his all poverty or the economic problems, he would always be attentive to know where it is, who is coming, who is walking to that side, and through all the CCTV cameras, and always aware what is going on with where it is and what is happening to this gem, because it's very vital and very precious to the person. So it's a sudden change of the gem or a sudden break of a piece or an edge, they will notice it very, 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 very quickly and very clearly. Things that the other person may not notice. So in the same way, our minds are very much inclined into our lives, and it is the most precious thing. So a sudden, unexpected, dangerous or unpleasant stimuli, we quickly respond to it. And our minds are programmed to that. That is mainly because of the latent craving. And also, what happens is, since our mind is already programmed for such responses, to respond to such stimuli, the process happens very quickly. As soon as we step on a fire or a throne, the pain is felt and it is taken as an unpleasant stimuli or an object that is harmful or detrimental to the life or to the person, and suddenly we respond to it. We go away from it. We run away from it, or we ward off. We strike against. So somehow we try to avoid the danger. And this could happen very quickly because our mind is trained for this, is always attentive to this. Like a scientist who is observing the cell behavior would quickly notice a sudden change in the cell. We, on the other hand, we will be very attentive and quickly respond to whatever stimuli that is not pleasant to us. And also sometimes, due to strong defilements, we may respond to very pleasant stimuli as well. This is very noticeable when someone is attached to the beauty of people. Whenever they see a beautiful person walking by, they suddenly turn their head and see. It happens naturally. It happens naturally. The same thing when a mosquito bites, we suddenly strike this and kills it. That's what normally most of the people would do. And they would be suddenly attracted towards the pleasant objects while running away or moving away from the unpleasant objects. And this also happens whenever they experience a very bad foul smell, they suddenly close their noses. And sometimes suddenly when the sound is very loud or very gross, very harsh, we would close our ears. So if the object is very pleasant, think about when we are seeing a very tasty, the best food I like, the most the favorite food, suddenly our body moves to take it, quickly to take it before someone else takes it. So these kind of dispositions, attempts, initiations happen out of a sudden, especially to the unpleasant stimuli and also to pleasant stimuli. But even though it happens in a very short period of time, given the speed of the consciousness, given the rapidness of the consciousness, it is possible for the consciousness to process this entire data not very deeply, but in a level that it could bring a response. In a level that it could bring forth a response. It could respond to this. It will not be able to fully analyze this and understand what's going on, whether it's impermanent suffering or see it philosophically, or to observe it spiritually with a deep insight. That would not have such time because my minds are not trained for that. If someone has trained Vipassana insight meditation for a longer period, even a sudden stimuli, they would respond with a very insightful way. It's possible, as mentioned in Dhamma. But most of us, our minds are not trained to that level to respond to this with the wise attention. So therefore, even though the instinctive reactions are sudden, even though the instinctive reactions happens out of, it seems like it is happening without any specific conscious involvement. According to Theravada teachings, the mind process, since the mind is very rapid and quick, it is able to get the information and quickly brings a response. And the Rūpa also arises very rapidly. The consciousness is able to produce some Rūpas, Vayu Dhatu in the body, Chittaja Rūpas, and they will be modified by the intimations according to the consciousness, and then suddenly the response happens, the bodily movement happens. Therefore, even though instinctive reaction seems to be happening without the involvement of consciousness, the rapidness of the conscious process allows us to consider Theravadians to claim that the consciousness, they are all deliberate conscious activity. They are all deliberate conscious activity. When it comes to Vinaya, Buddha has not promulgated rules to such level to prohibit instinctive reactions. For instance, we are not supposed to burn the earth. We cannot burn it, we cannot break it, we cannot dig it. We can't do neither of them. So, but now think while even we cannot light a fire on wood, because wood would eventually burn, and in the end it will burn the earth. But we can light a fire on a brick surface, because bricks is not going to get burned. It's not a fuel of fire, so eventually the fire is not going to affect the earth. Now, in an instance where someone is holding a torch, not an electrical torch, the fire torch, when the torch is burned, sometimes it may at the end it may burn the hand. If someone was not attentive, a monk, when it burns the hand, he may suddenly react and take away or release the torch, and it would fall down eventually, and it will burn the earth. If you purposefully drop a torch onto the earth, there is an offense. Monks cannot do that. While I cannot just put a fire onto the earth. Cannot do that because it's prohibited by the rule. But as an instinctive reaction, if I happen to drop the torch, because it burns, I felt the heat and it burns my hand, and even it falls down, there is no offense for that, because it was an instinctive reaction to an unpleasant stimuli that would harm my body. So in most of the cases, Buddha has relaxed the rules for such movements, for such bodily and verbal movements. But in terms of Abhidhamma, still a consciousness is involved. It's a voluntary activity. We may even talk about the actions that are done in while dreaming. For example, we have a very strong offense of a Sikkhapada saying that intentional emission of semen with physical effort is a grave offense to a monk. So, but it could happen while dreaming, while monk is in sleep. But Buddha said there is an intentional effort in it. In terms of Abhidhamma, it's a voluntary activity. Voluntary doesn't mean that he's able to control it. In this regard, in Theravada teachings, it's a deliberate chetana involvement is there. But that is not to a level to promulgate a rule. It's nothing to be prohibited through a rule, because it happens in a state where mind is not fully aware of itself. The mind doesn't know what it is doing. The person doesn't have the sense of the I, that the control is not there. Therefore, Buddha has not laid a rule, and if someone emits semen during a sleep, while he sleeps, while the mind is very drowsy, there is no offense for that. There is no offense for that. All offenses are one is exempt from offenses if the action happens while he is dreaming. So therefore, just because something is a voluntary activity doesn't mean that there are rules or rules promulgated in Vinaya. So we do recognize that instinctive activities are somewhat different from the voluntary activities that we experience in day-to-day life. Even these instinctive activities, if we consider the voluntary activities as the deliberate activities, for instance, right? Deliberate activities, I would rather say deliberate. So voluntary activities that we intentionally do while we are awake and we are aware about what we are doing. Then we have the instinctive activities. Both fall under the category of deliberate activities, but they are treated differently. But whether the consciousness is involved or not, there is no argument in Theravada, because even if the action happens out of a sudden, within milliseconds, still it was done with consciousness. The consciousness was involved in it, right? So then we'll read the handout. The sudden happening of an act is not a reason to decide that the act was involuntary. Involuntary means it didn't have a deliberate intention. Consciousness arises and vanishes very rapidly. Even such consciousnesses can produce viññati rūpa and engage in physical and verbal activities. So it could happen in a sudden. The consciousness is so rapid that it could process the data very quickly in a superficial level, not in a very deep level, unless the person has developed the concentration and the mind to a very high level, like the Buddha does when he is doing the twin miracles. The consciousness is able to process the information and produce Rupas and Viññati and make a physical or verbal activity. One may act suddenly due to various reasons. One such reason is preferences, ruchi and aversion or dislike. It is natural for beings who are not well restrained to be attracted to objects they like and move away from objects they dislike. That's also obvious. We are attracted to the objects that we like and we move away from the objects that we don't like. Sometimes they ward off objects that they don't like. For instance, when seeing attractive male and female figures, it is natural for beings who have not suppressed lust to turn towards such objects and look at them instantly. That is natural. Then such activities are performed by chitta kiriya vayo dhatu, the matter chittaja rupas that cause the bodily activities, produced by loba mula chittas and modified by kaya viññati. So such an activity, looking at someone who is attractive with an attraction, like to try to enjoy the beauty, that is normally done with loba mula chittas. Then unrestrained beings suddenly close their nostrils when encountering strong foul smell, close their ears when listening to harsh sounds, suddenly shout when badly hurt, and instantly crush mosquitoes that bites them. Such sudden acts are done with dosa mula chittas. They are not involuntary activities according to Theravada. They are not happening without consciousness. There is some deliberate involvement there. Why are such activities not involuntary? Why are they not unconscious activities? Such instinctive actions or behaviors can be prevented by being mindful in each situation. If we are very mindful in each situation, if you are very cautious, and if you have determined not to respond to such stimuli, then it's possible to prevent, it's possible to inhibit such acts. So that what does it mean? So we train our mind and we may stop it. So if we could stop it by training our mind, it means there is involvement of the consciousness into these activities. So according to Theravada, even they happen out of a sudden, they are conscious activities, deliberate acts. After training the mind for a long period, one becomes capable of holding off instinctive responses to unexpected, sudden, unpleasant stimuli. In such training, one trains the mind not to react to unexpected, sudden, unpleasant stimuli. It means one can withhold instinctive activities by influencing the mind. That is possible only because such acts are voluntarily done with consciousness. So they are done with, voluntary means not in the sense of what we discussed last week. There is a deliberate involvement, intentional involvement to the activity. Another reason for instant responses to unpleasant stimuli is the attachment to one's own life. That also falls under the category of defilements, but I would rather take it as a separate defilement reason, because that is common to everyone. It's not possible to subdue this. It's natural to have this feeling towards the life. Due to the desire to live, beings are afraid of death. Beings instantly react to things that could bring discomfort or harm to themselves. Even though the reactions are sudden, they are voluntary. In most of such occasions, such reactions are done with dosa mula chittas. Mostly we done it out of fear or dislike. Then they are triggered by the attachment to life, bhava tanha, right? Bhava tanha. A similar phenomenon can be observed when parents suddenly react to dangers that could befall their children. That is very clearly seen in parents. So when a danger, if they sense a danger befalling on their children, they suddenly react to that. And this is very clearly seen in pregnant mothers. If suddenly they happen to fall, quickly, it seems like unconsciously, suddenly they are protective of their baby in the womb. So this seems like happening out of a sudden, but still, as their attachment towards the children is very strong, parents' attachment to the child is very strong and powerful, they would act out of a sudden in the face of dangers. A pregnant mother, when facing danger, instantly take measures to somehow protect the child in the womb, the fetus. This is due to the strong attachment ingrained in parents towards their children. As recorded in some stories, arahants do not react to suddenly to unexpected dangers befalling them like putujanas do. Right? There are a few stories about this. Now, once there was a monk who was reputed among the monks, right? Maybe also surely within the lay people as well, that he was considered to be an arahant. They have a doubt that maybe he is an arahant because of his behavior and his restrained nature. But still, they wanted to check. They were not very sure about it. So while they were taking a bath in a river or a lake, a young monk dived under the water while the senior monk was taking bath in the water. He came and suddenly he came like a crocodile and touched his legs. Then suddenly the senior monk responded, so please help me, a crocodile has caught me. So there was a sudden response to the stimuli. He shouted out of fear. Then everyone understood that he's not an arahant. So then there was another story in which a monk, also reputed to be an arahant, a king wanted to test him. Then he brought him to the palace and made him to sit on the lion's throne, and he cut a sour fruit in front of him. He brought a very sour fruit and cut it in front of him. While he was cutting, he observed the behavior of the monk. He was looking at the fruit, and the salivation, like saliva, came into his mouth. It was oozing, like not out, but he was swallowing saliva. The response was there. This is not a voluntary activity actually. This is something that is happening in the body, but still, according to Theravada, triggered by consciousness. If saliva is happening, is oozing or coming, salivation happens when seeing some food, we normally say it's due to those lobha-mula chittas. But normally, as a biological process, when we eat, saliva has to come in order to digest the food. That's a natural process. But if it comes even before we start eating, and as a response to the likeness of the food, then surely this is lobha-mula chitta in most of the cases. So then the arahant, the king decided that Bhante, venerable monk, was not an arahant by then. Then there was another monk who was blind in ancient Mahāvihāra. He was the most senior in the group. And while everyone else have gone out for Pindapata, this monk stayed in the monastery alone in the dining in a hall. So the king, another king, wanted to check him, and he came crawling, without making any sound, and suddenly he touched the Venerable's leg. So the story goes as Bhante did not react to his this stimuli because he was blind, and if for example we are not able to look what is going on, suddenly many thoughts could come in us, and we will suddenly react to that, or we may ward off the object, or we may take away our leg, or we may shout, or suddenly stand up, or reactions could happen. So there was no even such a movement in his leg, and suddenly staying like a pillar or a stone, he just asked the question, who is that? And then that incident, because when the king touched the leg, he even didn't feel it was sudden jerk was there. No, the monk asked, because the monk was very mindful, and he felt the touch, and his mind could process that this is a touch of a hand, because if someone touches us, we can feel it. Like if someone holds our leg or hand, we know someone has held it. It's not just something touching, or it's not animal struck us. So we know that we are able to recognize it, to recognize the feel of a hand from something else. So then Bhante just recognized that someone has touched him, and he just asked question, who is that? So it shows that when the mind is free from defilements, that is not to say that sudden responses, Arahants, not to say that Arahants do not make sudden responses. Yes, they do make sudden responses, but the way they do is hugely different from how we do. In our reaction, it comes out of defilement, like mostly out of fear. Mostly out of fear. But in them, they just respond to the occasion in order to avoid the dangers, to avoid the problems that would have happened. For example, if a vehicle goes through him and he would get injured or he would die, and if he survives, he has to find out ways to sustain his life. The huge problems would happen, and a lot of pain will arise. So knowing all these disturbances, they would not let themselves to fall on such disastrous situations. They would avoid them as much as possible. But that is not to say that. But they don't do it as we do. When we avoid a danger, it affects our entire system. Even the biological processes change. Heartbeat increases. Speed of breath increases. We start to shiver. Some may even vomit, urinate. The sweat. People start to sweat. Beings start to sweat. So we can see that there's a huge change that is mainly due to the craving for living. Yes. So these are the things that I would like to discuss, and I think since the time is a few minutes left, I would take this topic to the next week: habitual actions and the actions driven by vasana, because there is something to be talked about. Vasana kilesas, that would be quite interesting, so I'll take it to the next week. So today's topic was instinctive reactions. So the takeaway message is instinctive reactions are done with the consciousness. There is a slight conscious attentiveness during that process, but it happens in a very rapid speed. We are not able to recognize it, and the next reason is due to our defilements, due to our preferences, attachment to the life, our mind is programmed in a way to respond to them quickly, and such responses happen with defiled minds in most of the cases. That also shows that this attentiveness, this alertness to such responses is mostly based on our defilements. And the proof for the Theravadians to show that there is conscious involvement in this is that such activities could be inhibited or prevented with a lot of effort and a lot of training. If we focus well, if we train our minds not to react to such instances, we'll be able to do that. And the next thing is getting rid of the defilements, especially the ignorance. If we are able to get rid of the ignorance or to subdue the defilements, even without determining not to respond to such stimuli, we just happen to subdue the defilements, we'll not be responding as before. That's another reason. If you have understood the true natures of the life, if your insight wisdom is growing, you may feel to certain objects which we responded with a defiled mind before, we would see it. Suddenly the thoughts, insightful thoughts, more mature thoughts will arise in us if we have trained ourselves. It is not, when we are practicing meditation, we are not training our minds with the intention of not responding to stimuli. What we do is we bring forth the understanding. We try to understand the true natures of the life. We try to subdue the defilement. We try to remove the element of ignorance. we develop the faculty of wisdom. That's our main purpose. When this wisdom is developed and the defilement of ignorance is subdued or is weakened, then automatically our minds would respond to such stimuli in a more matured, calm way. So this shows that our minds are always being taken by the defilements even while we are doing wholesome deeds. So it's not completely free from the effects of defilements. So that's the place where Paramattha Jatikas play a huge role. And next day we are going to talk about the Vasana Kilesa, the effects of Vasana, which holds the mind of Arahants and Pacceka Buddhas not to reach the level of omniscience. So it shows that they cannot reach it because their Magga Chittas were not that much powerful to eradicate the entire spectrum of defilements, the defilements themselves and their remnant effects. Their wisdom is not that broader, that much developed. But thing is, even they have eradicated the defilement part, the layer of defilement, still the effects, the vasana is holding their mind. So according to Theravada teachings, why they do not reach the omniscience, it's mainly because they are being withheld or they have been limited by the vasana, ignorance, vasana kilesa, ignorance, vasana of the ignorance. So therefore, for us also it is very important to know that even though when we are doing wholesome deeds, there is no unwholesome mentalities arising in the mind, connected with the mind still the mind is held or affected or caught by defilements to a certain level. So it's not completely free, the mind stream. That's why when an unexpected, unpleasant stimuli happens, suddenly the mind changes into a different state and quickly respond to this. But if that holding of defilements is lessened, the grip is lessened, or it's been distant by, it is made to be distant by constant practice, then our minds would react differently. As long as it is not completely eradicated, always the fear is ingrained, the fear would be there, or at least disliking would be there, because Anagami doesn't have fear, though he still have Bhava Tanha, but still they would not like to lose their lives, especially the lives in their Brahma realms. Therefore, the one who completely removes this is entirely free from such desire. So their instinctive reaction, they would make instinctive reactions, but not in a way as we Putujanas do. So this is the topic that I would like to discuss today. I have discussed today. So next day we'll be moving to a new topic: habitual activities and actions driven by vasana. We can use the same handout for the next year. I'll conclude the lecture, giving the opportunity to ask questions.
There was a nice answer. My first question is, I quickly check the meaning of the two words intuitive and instinctive in the Oxford Dictionary. So there the definition itself says those are actions without involvement of the consciousness, or something to that effect. And I don't remember the exact words, but the definition is that. So actually, from what we have learned and what we discussed, it's quite obvious that according to Abhinava, those two words has no realistic meaning at all. Because we have to reject it as two things which doesn't happen without involvement of the consciousness. So this was the thought that came to me, and I thought I will just tell you that. But it, of course, it will be a very difficult thing to convince other people people in the society that the life is like that. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, according to normal concept of the people and also biology, if I know, there are instinctive reactions that are unconsciously done, no involvement of consciousness. But according to Theravada, it has to have the involvement of consciousness. That's a must, as you said.
Vandami Bhante.
Yes.
So my question is, Bhante, so although there were instant or instantaneous reaction to kusala or akusala, might be because of our defilements or like akusala, sorry, but that recognition, is it all because of the sanya? Whatever we have, we are cognizing?
Yes, it's a process actually. It's a process. Normally, in order to recognize the stimuli, as Abhidhamma explains, few conscious processes has to continue. We haven't done it yet. It is not recognized by one consciousness. Sanya plays a huge role in this recognition. Sanya plays a huge role. But according to Abhidhamma, it's not done with one consciousness or one sanya. There are processes going on. For instance, in order to recognize stimuli, maybe a quite number of conscious processes would occur. Then at the end, it recognizes this, and it recognizes this is something unpleasant. Because, for example, if you step on a fire, the feeling, the burning sensations are there, and it suddenly recognizes this, and quick a response would happen. But if someone has trained the mind, the same process will continue. That's a natural process occurring in our mind. We take some time to process and recognize what has arrived at our doors. Then, if the mind is trained, it will see it in a different angle. Sees it in a different angle, or just a burning sensation, tejo dhatu, or the heat element, or just the unpleasant kaya bodily consciousness has occurred, and this is what happens in cause and effects. The cause was the fire, and the effect was the sensation. So that kind of I would say religious or philosophical, insightful thoughts would occur in the person. So what we do is we train ourselves so that even in an instant sudden occurring of a stimuli, we will be responding, we will be processing it with a wholesome mind, insightful mind, with more intellect, rather than responding it with the defiled mind based on our basic defilements. So to your question, yes, sanya plays a huge role, but there are many consciousness processes we call chitta viti, mind processes. We haven't talked about them yet. Occur in a very short period, and in each and every process, sanya, the perception is there, and it recognizes the object to certain levels depending on the process. At a later stage of the process, it recognizes very well. Then comes the response. So, in terms of general saying, you can say it's recognized by sanya. It's perfectly correct. If we don't go into such detail of Abhidhamma analysis. But in Abhidhamma explanations, we would say it's recognized by the mind processes led by perception. It's not only perception, many mentalities are involved there, but perception is the foremost in recognition.
Yes, Bhante. Sadhu.
Okay.
If I am to raise my question now, it's about self-defense, because in normal law of the country, if you prove that you have killed someone in self-defense, then you will be pardoned. Of course, in karma, it will never be
pardoned.
But the logic behind that self-defense is it's an instinctive or unintentional reaction to the situation that was faced. So, but probably when you look at it from a karma point of view, you just said about the chitta-vritti and the processes that are involved, and Purva Chetana may be happening in a very, very brief period, and that seems to be the excuse that is used by the law to pardon a person.
Yes.
Then in terms of karma, that still would be giving a similar effect, depending on how much those defilements were involved in those thoughts.
Yes, exactly correct. So there's a when as you raised about the idea of self-defense in our Vinaya rules, there are instances where self-defense was justified, but not in killing. Not in killing. Killing a human being is a parajika offense. Even killing the fetus or abortion. If a monk advises for abortion or encourages someone to abort for the abortion, I think it's aborting, right? I don't know the verb form. So it's a parajika offense. If the person dies, if the fetus dies, it's a parajika. The monk loses his monkhood. And if we kill someone for self-defensing, yes, still it's a parajika offense. There is another offense for us, which is a minor offense, hitting another person out of anger. Hitting out of anger. In a fight or maybe some other incidents, we are not supposed to hit someone. Monks are not supposed to hit someone. If a monk hits a upasampanna monk, it's a grave offense. Grave means it's a pachitya offense, a much higher offense. If we hit a non-ordained person like a samanera or a lay person, that's a dukkata offense, much lesser offense, but still both are offenses. But it's given in the text that hitting for self-defense is possible. There is no offense for that. For example, when a monk is walking on a forest area, some thieves or burglars are waiting to capture him or to harm him or to steal his stuff. The monk can say, "Don't come, just stay there. You should not come close to me." We can warn them. And if we know that, we assume that they are going to harm us, and if he still comes towards the monk, we can hit him. And or there's another offense like we can hit him and go and chase him away. It's possible. There's no offense for that. And there's another offense of showing, like to make him afraid. Like you raise your hand. It's not hitting, that we indicate that we are going to hit. That's another offense. The showing, threatening someone. It's not threatening actually. Talasattikang ugireya, like you pretend that you are going to hit him in order to scare the person. That is also possible in self-defense. Therefore, but not for killing. There are instances where the Buddha has recognized this, but he was very much careful not to give this allowance for killing, because killing is a very grave offense. So there's some interesting point in our Vinaya where the self-defense was justified to some extent. There's no offense, but if you ask the question, is the karma is accumulated? Yes, the karma is accumulated. So sometimes Vinaya rules and the karma does not match altogether. Yes, it's a very interesting point, and as in the law, it's the person will be pardoned because in that specific rule of hitting someone, I think the Buddha has followed the general idea, like he has given us to defend ourselves. He has given opportunity for us to defend ourselves. It's something like a common idea in the world. You should be allowed to defend yourself. But he didn't give this opportunity, the allowance for killing. It's another very important point, because killing, whether it was done for self-defense or whatever reason, is prohibited, and a monk loses his monkhood. So maybe the law has given that chance or lessened the gravity of the offense or the activity, following the conventions of in the world, and also there is an idea that you should be able to protect yourself. No, others are not supposed to harm yourself, so you should be given the opportunity to protect. Maybe that's the conventional idea that they have. And also there is another allowance in law. People can kill someone for the self-defense, and also if the killing happens out of sudden anger, in Sinhalese we call hadisi kope. If it happens out of, like, if he couldn't control himself, suddenly something happens out of quickly bursting, he just grabbed something and hit. And if he was able to prove it, that it happened out of sudden anger, still there will be some punishment, but it will be lessened. As far as I know, it will be lessened. There is some punishment. Still, there is punishment for sudden anger, but for self-defense, no, he will be pardoned fully if he is able to prove that. But sudden anger, the offense or the punishment will be lessened. In that sense, yes, it's because it happens out of a sudden, and a very short period he came into a conclusion, and it's err to err is human. It's like humans make such errors, and it's that always human error is involved there. So he was not able to completely grasp the entire process properly, and couldn't control his emotions. Out of a sudden, he reacted, and this person died, or he attacked this other person. So they have considered about this. Yeah. So it's a very nice topic actually in terms of law.
Thank you very much. But connected to that, there's another thing which comes to my mind about the Bodhisattva. Erkapatta Nagaraja, though he was powerful enough to fully destroy the people who were harassing him, he didn't do anything. So that's a great quality of the Bodhisattva, which he does as a part of developing the paramita. And eventually, even that Nalagiri Ata, supposed to be one of the most powerful elephants at that time, wouldn't even get near him because of that vipaka or parami bala. So this is something that again just came to my mind, and hope you would bear with me.
Yeah. So it's because if we are able to control our instinct behaviors, like Bodhisattva was very famous for this. He didn't react to, in many occasions he didn't react in terms of self-defense even, because that incident of some hunters carrying the bean, the big snake, he was called Silava Nagaraj or something like that. He observed Sila, and he was carried to be killed, and someone somehow saved him in the end. So, and in the Kantivadi Jataka, when his all four his limbs were cut off, he still didn't react to that. So when still he practiced parami, patience and so forth, tolerance. And if someone can develop to that level, surely it will be a very high spiritual achievement that would always save them in samsara.
Thank you.
You're also nice. Yeah, I think there's no more questions, right? Okay, so we'll conclude the lecture, and next week we'll be talking about a very interesting topic, vasana, kilesas, and how the actions are driven by them. So we'll today by discussing this Dhamma, the merits that we have accumulated, may this help us to attain the liberation as soon as possible, and also may this merit help for the lengthening of our sasana. Buddha sasanang chirantittatu, Buddha sasanang chirantittatu, Buddha sasanang chirantittatu, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.